Well, welcome. It is time for another adventure in asking Mike Lundy. I kind of toyed with the idea of calling this Stump Mike, but too many ways we could go with that. We just
It'd be
we
too
decided.
easy.
So we're gonna. This is called Ask Mike, and it's a great podcast for you as a music educator, no matter what. Uh, if that means band, orchestra, choir, just general fine arts. Great tips for you. And here's why I like it. I appreciate the fact that Mike Lunny is giving back to the community that took care of him. And we're just trying to share some things that will make your life easier or give you some, I had never thought of that before. Mr. Lundy, I think that it's a truism. We've heard it several times, but we don't always remember it. If we can get one thing out of these each week, then we're better off than we were before.
That's right.
So I'm excited to hear what have you been asked about this week?
Well, in terms of a really important thing is searching for a job. For
Oh,
whatever reason, you're looking for a new job.
okay. So um, you've done this before?
I have, and I've worked diligently with tens of
Tens
people
of tens.
of people who are looking for jobs, helping with mock interviews, reading down their cover letters, their resumes, giving advice, going through sample questions with sample answers, things of that nature.
Now
It's a skill.
I'm gonna allow you the opportunity to defend because I do not mean this negatively.
Okay, that's what you
But
always say before you
but
insult
the
me, but go
music
for it.
education profession is not one that people listen. There's as many people that have multiple jobs in this profession as there are stay in one place for their entire career.
Oh, yeah.
So this is an important topic.
Yeah. There's some really fine educators that have had 12 jobs in their career. There's also some really fine, my biggest mentor, Greg Miller in Iowa Park, worked there for 36 years.
Wow.
He went 2 years to Roscoe as a high school director. He's my junior high beginner band director.
Okay.
Then he went to Roscoe for 2 years when I was a freshman and a sophomore. Then he came back as the high school director my junior year, and he just retired a few years back. But he had an amazing career with state marching, honor band, finalist. Stayed at one gig.
But not all of us do.
No, most don't.
And
Most don't.
sometimes
And
I
especially
think
young college kids, they're thrown into the trough, man, to the
so
trenches. Find a job.
that's where I was going to go. So I graduated, I've got my music education degree, my certificate, all the things that I have to do. Now what? Am I just supposed to go knocking on doors and
Yeah.
say, hey, listen, I know how to teach music. Hire
Well,
me.
in the really old days before internet, which I need to tell my grandkids one day that
So,
I went to school before there was Google.
I guess how did I
But
make it all the way through college without a computer in my house?
yeah, we just didn't know any better. But we just called the road guys.
Yeah.
We'd call the store, whatever store it was in
So at
that
the
part of the
local
state.
music thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and just say, hey, what jobs are open? And we had to network like crazy. Now, as times have progressed, we don't network as much, but let me say that networking is still, in my opinion, the quickest, best way to get a job.
Absolutely.
We kind of hide behind because of technology,
I'm not even going to pretend
doing,
to be shocked by this. This is my life. You never know. We've said this before on our podcast. You
yeah,
never know where you're going to run into somebody again, or you never know when you're going to need somebody.
yes,
So I'm always meeting people. I'm always taking mental notes. They do this there, they do this here. And as a former road guy, I get asked all the time, hey, we're looking for somebody. If you hear of
right.
anybody. And so, great point.
Yeah. And in today's technology world, I feel it's so many letters of recommendation, which now are not really letters of recommendation. It's a computer generated form that's almost identical, whether it's Houston, San Antonio, Bront, Roscoe, doesn't matter. It's the same form.
Kind of
And
feels
so
like a
you
form
check,
letter. Yeah.
yeah, and you check yes or no and kind of give little credentials. Then it'll have one box. Do you want to explain anything further? That's where I do a big giant letter of recommendation, and I hope they read that. But we kind of tend to hide behind that as people who recommend and people who are trying to search for jobs. They get caught behind their computer where what they need to do is be talking to people at a convention, the region
Here to say,
meeting,
is
the road
TMBA
man.
still valid for this?
Oh God, yeah, yeah.
Okay,
I help out with my wonderful friend Luke McMillan's booth and your
sure.
booth. Okay, so both those booths, I don't think there's ever a day goes by where someone doesn't go, "Hey, Mike, have you heard about any jobs up in the Lubbock area or the Amarillo area?"
Right.
They're looking for leads. They're looking for leads, and man, and I try to help them as much as I can. The thing I try to present first is, I guess, the biggest fear that these directors have, or job searchers have. They're scared they're not going to find a job. Believe
Okay.
me, I understand that 100%, because especially if they have a family and they're, man, Mike, I've got to get a job. But it comes in four distinct waves. It's been
Okay.
this way for decades. The first wave is the pre-UIL wave of job openings. Those job openings are not a whole lot. That's what scares people. It's people who are announcing retirement. For instance, the kids at Wiley knew I was finishing my year during summer band.
Okay.
So they were able to look for directors in March
Right.
and land who they wanted. Okay. And so they're announcing retirements, new schools opening. This wave is pretty big in the bigger towns where some of those KDISD seems like they build a new high school every year, and because they're just exploding. Some of these positions are even open to immediate effect for what that's worth. In other words, it's like immediately they want to fill this position like in 2 weeks. Um, Most of the time, the wave one jobs tend to be filled by strict networking criteria.
Okay. Explain.
It's they know somebody who knows somebody who says they would be good at that job, and they filter them in. It's not a stack of 75 applicants that they're dealing with.
Got it.
Some school districts, when they open a new school, they will pick directors from other schools in within their cluster, put them
Sure.
together. And I won't say the name of the school because it's an incredible school district. But they did this for one school. I got to judge in marching with about 30 kids in the field, their first time in varsity competition. And they picked four directors from their cluster, said, "We're going to give you everything you need. Let's get this done." 4 years later, I saw them at state marching and finals in Class 5A with 250 kids on the field.
It's crazy,
So
but
they
it
know
works.
who they want, because
Right.
it's wave one. Wave one, you know who you want.
Well, the
So
other part of that too is
don't be
this kind of a
disappointed.
culture hire, isn't it? I mean, this is the
Yes,
culture that we know
that's
you
right.
create, and that's what we want. And go do
Yeah.
your thing.
Well, we're my wonderful people who I know are searching for jobs. They panic because they're not the person that already works in that cluster, or they're not, so they think it's all over with. Okay, but
Right.
it's only wave one. Wave two is right after UIL, before the end of school. People accepting new positions from wave one, kind of musical chairs. People
Sure.
choosing to move on, possible due to UIL scores, good or bad. They get bad scores. Maybe they're moving on to another school. They get good scores. They're at a 1A. Maybe some 3A is going to hire them. This one begins over the next couple of weeks, so after UIL.
Got it. Or people just didn't want to announce that until they got through UIL because it's just a tough
Yes.
gig with kids thinking, well, you're leaving anyway.
Yeah, probably should add that to my little document, because I didn't think about that, but that's exactly right. They don't want to get up into the turmoil of drama. Let's wait till the day after UIL to
Right.
announce it. So that's the wave two. Wave two is still hard to kind of get hired, because still it's kind of who knows who, who's proven themselves, what administrators worked with you before, things of that nature. Okay.
So I'm gonna ask you this
Yeah,
question.
go for
What I'm trying to figure out, me trumpet player. So
it.
it's not necessarily that it's a good old boy, if I can throw that out there. Everybody's still going through the right process, but it does help that they already have recommendations and they know. So I shouldn't be offended.
Correct. That's it exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just want
Don't
to
be
make sure.
offended.
I'm not saying anybody is like going, well, they already knew who they were going to hire before they even posted it. And sometimes that happens.
Sometimes it
I
does
assume.
happen.
But my point is the process is still the process. And you just have
Hmm.
to figure out where you fit in that process. And you have to trust that process, because as a person who hires a lot of people, when I assume somebody's going to be awesome and then I sit down and talk to them for an hour, I'm not sure that they were really that awesome, or they're just not a good fit for this. So it doesn't mean it's over.
Right.
It's just wave
And
one,
so,
just
yeah.
wave
And
two.
so, yeah. And so sometimes they get offended, because I've had people searching for jobs say, "Oh gosh, Mike, I've sent out, 40 applications, but I've only gotten two interviews." And it breaks their heart when I go, "Well, that's
Right.
pretty good."
Right.
That's pretty good to get 2 interviews. At least you'll
Can
get the
I
practice of the interviews.
show you some statewide ratio? You're okay.
Yeah, you're okay. Then we get to wave three, end of school until the what we call the 45-day mark. That's the
Okay.
day in which the state says you either have to honor your contract or break your contract 45 days prior to the first day of instruction.
Okay.
And that number might have changed. I might be old hat on this. So if it's changed, let me know. Send me an email. Okay.
Ask Mike.
Yeah, ask Mike. So, that's that point to where the job market starts to really open up, in that first
Right.
part of summer. This is a big one. It's when most jobs open up and there's a lot to choose from. So that's when all of a sudden these guys that got 2 interviews with 40 applications will send out 20 applications and get 8 interviews. And all of a sudden now, the same person who was scared to death they were never going to get a job, the question turns around to, do I accept this job because I've got 3 interviews next week?
Right.
It comes into that whole criteria.
Okay. But listen, uh, if I'm my personality, I'm probably a wave two guy as far as the best time to get hired or to do that process from an administrator standpoint. But it's probably a lot of wave three going on.
Yes.
I mean, just in the practicality and reality of our profession.
Yeah, wave three is we can see wave three from the beach right now.
Okay.
We can see it approaching us. And
Sure.
it follows the same pattern every year. This is not anything new. I think Doug Fullwood, threw out some love to that guy. He's a good friend of mine over in Royce City.
Okay.
Amazing band director. Does the web page, or excuse me, the Facebook page Band Hacks. Really good
Okay.
Facebook page. But he's kind of put this in words, and at least it was on his page. It might have been someone else. I hope I don't get the wrong credit. But yeah, Doug, all this job search material that I've got here, it's things that he's written out.
Okay.
He took what we all did and put it down on paper.
Well, that's
And
kind of what
so,
we're all
yeah,
trying to do, isn't
yeah.
it?
So yeah, we all steal from each other, and he takes care of it in that way. Okay.
Cool. Okay.
But
So wave
go
three,
ahead.
and then what's wave four?
Wave four. Most people are locked into their contract, but there's still openings. This wave is from mid-July until the start of the school year or
Oh,
summer
wow.
band.
Oh,
I've
wow.
seen directors get their dream job at TBA. They've got little job board, bulletin board upstairs on the second floor, and you can go by and look at it. And there's like little, I call them practice rooms, but little cubicles. And administrators and fine arts directors and band directors, whoever's in charge of hiring, will schedule interviews, and they'll work with those people and they'll offer jobs at that point.
Okay. Let me ask you something.
Isn't that scary?
How does that happen?
Yeah, it happens.
They just couldn't fill it before, and
Or someone leaves unexpectedly.
there you go. Or somebody else is in the wave four exit, and they
Yes,
suddenly need
and
somebody.
sometimes the waves break on each other because someone
Yeah.
has been hired, but it didn't reach that 45-day mark. So they can theoretically, I don't know about ethically, but theoretically, they can break that contract. They can sign a contract in April.
Don't you bring ethics into this conversation?
Yeah, we're not
Mike.
going to. Yeah, let's not confuse the world with ethics. We might have confused some people out there. But yeah, it does happen quite a bit in that regard. So you
Okay.
got to get those people into place. Okay. And it moves quick. It moves quick. When I took the job at Electra, it was about July. It was after Midwestern State University summer band camp. So it was like, I don't know, July 15th. Their director, Eddie Chance, had gone somewhere to a university
Okay.
to work as a trombone instructor, and they lost their band director. And I was just happened to be doing the band camp, and it all just happened really quick. And so sometimes it happens that way. And I stayed there for 8 years and had a wonderful experience at that
Okay.
little school. Okay.
After that first one.
Yeah, after that first one. Yeah, that's right. And Throckmorton really was a good experience. Wonderful kids. It was just I had to follow a person who had, school board had literally fired them, so they didn't leave anything. And the kids were
Sure.
great. We had a great time. And then most of wave one and wave two are head band director positions. Keep that in mind.
Sure.
Unless a new position is created. Like when we opened up a new third band director or assistants at the middle school, that becomes in that situation. You'll see people move into these positions, but a lot more assistant positions open up from mid-May on.
Right.
So, in fact, most of those TBA gigs, that you take at the last minute, most of those are, I would guess, would be assistant band director positions.
Okay.
You
But a
know,
lot of it's too, and you said this already, that wave one kind of sets the table for wave two
hmm
as people announce they're going to some of the wave one, they're filling some of the positions from wave one. They're creating an opening that might show up in wave two
yes,
or show up in wave. You know what I mean? I think you
yeah,
said that, but
yeah. They're all interactive,
yeah.
and this year more than any other year I've seen in my lifetime, there's going to be more openings.
Okay.
There's just more people who are retiring, more people possibly leaving the profession. Plus, Texas, we have the fastest growing public school system in the nation.
Right.
So,
I know
so there's going to be jobs.
so many districts that even several years now open without full. I mean, they weren't able to hire enough people for all the positions they have open. So,
That's right.
okay.
So I guess the takeaway on that little portion, don't be afraid. Just keep working if you're searching.
Right.
Just keep working,
Don't give
you
up.
know. And the next thing I want to go over is things about job search material. This says personal social media. Now
Okay.
let's go from recommending to preaching, okay? And I just want to read this. This is actually from I believe I got this from Doug. Uh, Quick reminder about your social media presence. You are free to place anything on social media that you desire. Just understand those of us who hire are going to search your pages and review whatever public information is out there. If you are already hired somewhere, you still have the right to free speech in terms of what you post, just as you have always had. You are free to post anything you wish. Just understand, as soon as the content interrupts the educational environment and students in any classroom, you may also have the freedom from employment, in addition to your freedom of speech. And I know a lot of people might push back on that, but oh my gosh, there was times when we would hire an assistant band director, and it was pretty much in my lap with the principals helping me. And I would go and I would just, if I didn't have access, I would utilize people I knew who had access, and they'd say, "No, you don't want that person." You know, yeah, all they do is drink all weekend and whatever, and
Right.
they
And I'm
post negative things about their school over and over and over again. They complain in public. Something that's simple. So just be careful out there, my job
Well,
searchers.
I would even take us another step, and this is going to probably label me, but that's okay. The language you use in your social media. In other words, if you uh, have very flowery speech, people are going to go, you know, you can you can say what you want to, Mike. I know who I am, and I don't necessarily. If you're going to drop f bombs or all that stuff in a public forum, you're still. We need you to be an example to these young people.
Yes.
And we talk a lot about nonverbal communication, just how we read each other's faces and body language. I don't think people realize. And here's the problem: once it's out there, it's out there.
Yeah.
So that's my 2 cents. We use social media in our hiring.
Yes. I think that's the big takeaway from that chunk is we do use social media in our hiring. Um, I've I don't know many times people have been fired for social media. It might be part of the criteria, but definitely in hiring, definitely in hiring. Okay. Um, and then the next section to kind of go into, there's going to be a lot of people applying for the same jobs, especially those we would probably consider the best jobs.
Okay.
Um, so the situation could be you versus literally 100 other applicants.
Right.
Even in little old Wiley, I hired a percussion instructor one year. I had 70 applications
That's
for one
overwhelming.
job. Yeah, about the bottom 30 were just like, no, no. One was like principal timpanist in the Czechoslovakian symphony that wanted to get to America, and couldn't tell if it was a scam artist or a real musician,
Right. Or zero experience.
or zero experience. And and sometimes, and to kind of catch that moment, um, don't be afraid if you're from a different state to apply in Texas. Just realize there are some prejudicial kickback of people. Schools will give you the policy of, we are not going to hire someone that's not accredited in Texas. If they don't have
Okay.
a Texas teacher's license, we are not going to hire them. That's going to be the choice of a school. But there's many, many fine musicians that come in from all parts of the world. I think one of the key, Loy Studer up at Ryder High School and at Ryder, and he's now at Legacy, one of their brand new schools. I think his entire staff is from out of state. They're from OSU, Oklahoma Baptist University, and amazing musicians. So, and there's a lot of schools that will work with you to get through that process. So I'm just
Right.
throwing that out for them. Don't feel if some schools that will be a hurdle you can't overcome. They'll just simply tell you, we cannot hire you unless you're accredited. And every school I worked at was actually that way.
Wow. Okay. But
They
I
said
think
you must
more
be
as we go
accredited.
along, based on our, 5 minutes ago, if they need a great teacher, they will figure out a way to get that great teacher on board.
That's right. That's
So,
right. Because there's just some paperwork to fill out, and they have to be pass their exams in the next 2 years, and they have to take some work. Well, we're very proud of our educational system here in Texas. So they make them jump through some hoops for them. Okay. So here's some considerations in obtaining a job interview. This is the band edition. There's no perfect recipe for landing a job, my friend, but here's some things you might consider. Consider the following. One, and definitely number one, proofread and have others proofread your materials, including your resume, cover letter, and other communication. I personally have been sent materials from someone else's school with a name on them a very large number of times. This should not happen.
right.
And even in what I do now as an old retired band director, there's lots of men and women that send me, they say they're having a hard time landing a gig. Send me your information. And then I'll look over it and there's some red flags.
Right.
And they don't mean them to be red flags. There's nothing they did wrong. It's worded it awkwardly where it's
Sure.
like, so we just kind of change. We're not trying to change the truth of the matter, but we're trying to change how they worded things or their use of grammar, things of that nature.
Have you ever said this to somebody? Have you read this?
Yeah, yeah. Have you read this? In fact, when every job I was ever in, I made sure I made friends with a senior English teacher.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Because if it was a really important communication, like we're going to Disney World, I would take it to him or send it to him and say, "Hey, could you help out with this?" And then I would like provide some lunches and things through the way and kind of help out, kind of show him my appreciation. But it was amazing; he'd come back all covered in red. So this is not grammatically correct. And
I
in
would,
these documents I'm sending out, a good English person would probably look at it and go, "Oh my God, does this guy even speak English?"
but I believe exactly what you just, I think people are actually quietly judgy about that.
Yeah. And they might not say anything, but they sure think it, and I'm the same way. If something comes across, and I'm a redneck spirit, I grew up a redneck. Deep down inside, I'm a redneck. But if a cover letter sounds very redneck, that's usually not the approach to take because most administrators have their masters in mid-level management and they've gone through the meat grinder,
Sure.
so you don't want to be too redneck about it, even though
I,
sometimes it's good to be able to speak Bubba.
can you say in the practical application, but in the hiring process,
Yes,
not so
yes.
much.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember when I got to Throckmorton, Ward Cooksey, the superintendent, brought me a skull can, but it was full of ground up Tootsie Rolls.
That's great.
And he said, "Yeah, use this to your advantage." I never used it, but he said, "Yeah, you can even put the dip in, you can swallow, they'll think you're amazing."
You're a man.
So that's a meaningless trivia story.
That's
Okay.
fun.
All right. And number two, it's risky to use the same cover letter for each job. Try to change things. Consider composing a new one specific to each position or that school's unique needs. One letter does not fit all. If I'm sending a cover letter to a 1A high school or a 6A mega marching giant, that same cover letter is not going to address the issues those administration people want in
True.
both those schools. So to kind of keep that in mind, okay? A really important one, which can kind of help with your roadman, research each program you apply to. When I
Hey,
came into my interviews, or go ahead.
what kind of research are we talking? That's all I was going to ask.
Oh yeah, past recognitions for the program, school statistics, how they fair in the what we call the Lone Star Cup competition, which is like they add all the points together, and the school that does the best and everything is the Lone Star Cup winner. That's a really good one, by the way. Look up Lone Star Cup competitors. Like I think Holiday. I love Holiday. I think they ended up like third or fourth in Lone Star Cup. If you know that kind of information, administrators, that's their band rating, that's their
Sure.
orchestra and choir rating, you know, so that they're like, oh yeah, we did the Lone Star Cup. But research that stuff out so when you come into your interview, you know exactly what the school has done. Try to gather social media from the administrators to see what their priorities are. Is it student culture? Is it academia? Is it hardware?
Right.
Try to find out what pushes their buttons. Research that school.
The second part of that question I would ask you is you're not talking just the music program. You're talking about the district in general.
Yeah, at the very least, the music program, but that's easy.
Right.
We can get on UIL forums to figure that
Right.
out. But figure out their number of kids passing English and math on the standardized test.
Wow.
Where do they
Okay.
fare? You know, that way you can talk of academia and how you're
Sure.
a team player and your band program is part of the entire academic umbrella of
But
what
it probably
happens at the
speaks to
school.
the students you'll be working with too.
Oh yeah. We tend to get the really smart ones.
Yeah. Heck yeah.
That's important to them. That's important to them. And so and we're not just trying to blow smoke. You know, we really want to be part of that program, and we want to know it. I think the most important informational thing I like to do, and this is before school security, I loved going to a school the day before the interview. Now,
Okay.
you can't do this anymore. I would just walk through the hallways. Just
You
wear a
can't
coat
do
and
that
tie.
anymore.
No, you can't do that. So don't try that. I'd wear a coat and tie, and I just kind of walk the hallway and just listen.
Sure.
Kind of listen to the general decorum of the school. I learned that was research for me. Now, if you can't do that anymore for good reason. Maybe if it's a school you want to work at in a couple of years, offer to do some free sectionals
Okay.
and show up. That
That's
way you
good.
can go through security, get your badge, and then you can kind of say, hey, can we go down to the teacher's lounge? Can we walk through the school during a passing period and see kind of what's going on? So research is not all just nuts and bolts. It's also kind of what the school is like. You
Right.
know.
And I will throw this out there too. If you have a good relationship with a road rep who goes to those schools anyway, and you tag along, we can check in and on our way down. If you're with somebody that's there for a purpose.
That's right. And they'll go in. And one thing I would tag on to that, and some directors are very intimidated by this. Be aware of the fact that it's really possible to have a good academic program and an athletic program and a fine arts program. In fact, I
That can
always
all be good.
jokingly,
Yeah.
they can. I always jokingly refer to the fact that I'm surprised that some 5A or 6A school didn't coerce me to come work for them because I saw the 1A state champion, the 2A state champion, the 3A state champion, and I saw the 4A in the state championship game. So
That's great.
just out of superstition, I could see an administrator going, we need to get that Mike Looney.
You're saying, get that guy over here.
He sees state champion football teams. you know how superstitious those guys are. I love
Sure.
coaches. They're superstitious. But sometimes they go, oh, man, I don't want to work at that school. They've got a really good football team. I've never worked at a school with a bad football team. And I
Right.
feel like I've always had good quality bands. I think it bleeds over in a good way. Now, I know there are situations where it's so centered on one activity that other ones kind of get smothered. I respect that, but it's not necessarily a red flag of death, you know.
Sure.
for the program.
And I also see this too. And again, I don't want to go too far off topic, but some of the smaller schools, you're sharing all those kids. So I mean, they got to be successful. You want successful things.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. When I was in a lecture, we couldn't have band practice without the football team, and the football team couldn't have football practice without the
without the
band
band kids, there you go.
because we were their entire offensive and defensive line was my low brass.
I feel like I'm going to say this in every one of our conversations: relationship, communication. I realize
Yeah.
we're just job searching right now, but don't let
It's
that
still the
scare you.
same.
Don't let
Yeah.
that
Don't
scare
let it
you away.
scare you. Yeah. Number 4 on my little list, and this will be downloadable. It might not be a good idea to be pushy, asking or for inviting yourself to interview.
Okay, explain it.
Send your materials in, maybe one email, be done with it. If they're interested, they will call you back. I kind of operated under a different format than a lot of directors. And I'm not trying to put down anything because some people have so many, like the time we had those 75 applicants or 70 applicants, I emailed back every single one of them. And
Okay.
then I cut it down to about 40 and I communicated back with them through email again. We're down to 40, whether they made it or not, and explained that we took 40. You were not in that process. I appreciate your information. Do I have your permission to pass this on if I feel like your criteria would meet another job in a better format? And then it got down to finally the final five, and I would call the final 10 and say, this is what happened. This is what I'm looking for. I didn't bring you into the final five, and these are the reasons. It wasn't a good fit for either one of us. And so, I mean, I'm kind of going too far on this, but that communication of just telling them that, but there's that point to where you'll have one applicant that'll email you once a day for 30 days
Or call.
with questions or call, leave message. I just wanted to ask you about how you do your beginning French horn. I haven't even contacted him back yet, so
Right.
don't be that pushy one. It's okay, maybe one email. Hey, did you receive my materials?
And that's what I'm
I
going
would
to
really
say.
love an interview at your school system.
I have no
Okay.
problem with that
Um,
email. I have no problem with that one email, but then let me do my
Yeah,
job
yeah,
and figure it out.
right. Yeah, just to verify that the documentation came through, because sometimes it doesn't. We've had that problem between us where I'll send
Right.
files and screw it up or something, and it doesn't go through. Okay. If you don't get an interview, you either don't fit the needs or there is something wonky with your written communication. Please don't take it personally. Keep trying, get people to review things for you. Okay. The next one, network. And we keep talking about this, but it's so true. Have people that can speak to your character, integrity, work ethic, and teaching. Those are your references. And this one's kind of touchy to talk about.
Okay.
Make sure your references are giving you a good reference.
Sure. I, I was going to kind of go here.
Yeah, I've had that happen where
Yeah.
they put a reference and I call and they go, "Oh no, you don't want to hire them." I'm thinking, "Oh my God, that's on." And it wasn't like a principal or an administrator. It was just like a fellow band director.
Right.
And I'm like, "Why is that on their list?" So hard conversations. You need to talk to communication. We beat it to death. But every time I applied for a job, I called all my references and I said, I want your God's honest truth. Do I need to leave your name on my list of references?
I say it this way to myself. Does this person only tell me things that I want to hear? I'm not sure that's the person I need to be asking life advice from or using as a reference.
Yes.
You have to have people in your network. You have to have people in your circle that tell you the truth
Yes.
and
As much as it hurts.
that you know will speak uh, on your behalf if you need them to.
Yes.
If that makes sense.
It does. Makes perfect sense. Makes perfect sense. Because with most of our automated systems, if you list like a person as a reference and give them an email, they'll just send it to that person, and that person has one of two choices initially. They can either do it or not do it,
Right.
and they will not tell you which ones have not returned a reference,
Right.
but you will not be interviewed.
Right.
So you need to talk to your references and say, "Hey, can I put your name down and your email, and will you return a reference for me?" And go into that hard conversation. Because if they
Well,
go, "Well, I'm kind of busy and I'm going through a lot of things in life right now, you probably need to leave me off your list." They might be totally honest. And it's like, "Oh, well, thank God."
or I even have some of the people in my life that I will be talking. I can't figure out why this is happening. I can't figure out this is I don't get what and unsolicited will go, well, you're right like a third grader and you're pretty negative.
Yeah.
Okay. Not sure I needed that, but I
Yeah.
did need that.
So you do have to be careful with all that involved. There's no doubt about that. Okay. So just make sure your references are really a reference. Okay. The next one is kind of geared towards new graduates.
Okay.
Have more experience than just your student teaching on your resume if possible. Try to teach lessons, teach band camp, volunteer time, gain experience. Um, I was fortunate enough in my undergrad experience that we only had one trumpet instructor professor in Wichita Falls, is Ken Van Winkle.
Okay.
He was a UNT 1 o'clock guy, and that was his first gig was to come to Midwestern. So I felt very fortunate. But
Sure.
there's all these kids that wanted to take lessons, and he was the only man in town. So I had like 20 to 30 private lesson students through my undergrad. That really helped a lot,
I
not just
bet.
on my resume, but helped me learn how to teach because I could do something really stupid and I could go to him and say, Mr. Van Winkle, this happened. He'd go, well, you idiot. Why didn't you do it? And he would kind of help me kind of figure out what I'm supposed to do as a teacher. And I learned a lot about teaching. The other thing is Tony Thompson. I don't know if you ever heard that name before. He was at the Ryder Band for years and years. And when I was an undergrad, on behalf of my dad's advice, because I said, I want to go clinic bands. And he goes, well, just show up. I go, you got to be kidding me, Dad. And he goes, yeah, just show up and stand there. Because this is before all the badges and school security, of course. But I'd
I
wait
was
till
going to
the,
bring that up. It's a little
yeah,
tougher just to walk up to it,
yeah.
but
But I've had students who are undergrads call and ask, can I just come watch your rehearsal? And then all of a sudden, a year later, I'm hiring him as a marching tech. But I
exactly.
just went to the Ryder Band. I just kind of stood around for a while. About 4 rehearsals in, Pony Thompson, Mr. Thompson, goes, who is that? So one of the directors, who are you? Said, my name's Mike Lunny. Said, what are you doing here? Said, well, I'm at Midwestern State University and I just want to help with marching band. And then he said, well, Mr. Thompson wants to talk to you after the rehearsal. So he talks to me, he goes, we don't have any money to pay you. And I go, Mr. Thompson, I'm not asking for any money. I want to do a good job and get a good letter of reference. And he goes, fair enough. And he put me to work. He put me in, I just hung out with the trumpets and helped them with their music and marching for that particular semester. So be available if at all possible, even if it's free of charge, just to get some
You
experience.
say, I'm here to learn and help.
Yes,
It's
no
great on a
doubt.
resume.
Yeah, it shows you the kind of employee that'll go above and beyond.
Agree.
They can speak highly of you. Okay. Number 7, I love this one. This is from Doug Fullwood. Make sure you're getting into this profession because you actually like kids. If you're teaching music just because you love music, you will struggle. Love kids, then love music. Let that come across in your initial communication. For all those job searchers out there that are new graduates, it's a lot different on this side of the stand
Yeah.
than it is on your side of the stand. You've got to love people and you've got to love kids, or you're going to struggle for your entire career. Where if you're a student in a band, you just play your part, have a good time. I had a little inkling of that when I did that Macy's Day thing. I got to be a band kid for a week.
Sure.
I wasn't the band director. It was so awesome, just to feel like I'm not responsible for anything but playing my part and marching my spot, and
Right.
just having fun, so it's just a lot different. So just make sure that you actually love working with kids, because
Right.
I've met college graduates that it's obvious they don't.
Well, the other side of that too is why do I want you in charge of my program if all you want to do is use these kids for your glory
Yes.
or use these kids for your reputation? How about you feed into our kids and together y'all create a reputation?
Yes. And kids are very smart. They can smell it out from a mile away if you're just wanting to use them as a means to get to a different position, or if you really want them to be better people and musicians.
Just like remember the Titans, attitude
Yeah,
affect leadership.
that's right. There's no doubt about that. Okay.
Yeah.
And then we go into most employers never enjoy fielding calls about where they are in the interview process, because we're kind of going back to that again. Trust me, employers will call if your skill set fits their needs. It's in their best interest to get the most qualified applicant for their program's needs. So they're going to call you if they need you.
Right.
Don't be overly persistent. There's a fine line between showing interest and being a nag about it.
And we've said this several times. Don't take it personal. They don't know if they like you or not. It's not about that. They're looking at your skill set. They're looking at what they need. It's a business decision initially.
Yeah, no
It's
doubt.
they're not being rude to you if your skill set doesn't fit what they need.
That's right.
But
And then
it's easy for you to say when you're not the one in the process.
right. And another one, and this is kind of not necessarily a touchy issue, but people have different lives going on. One of the big mistakes new teachers make in choosing a place to apply is making one of the following statements. I only want to teach in fill in the blank. town, school system. I won't consider a small school. I'm not willing to move. Don't make those statements unless there's truly a criteria. I know there's situations where the spouse, um, I know of a job situation where the spouse is a highly decorated, the lady is at Texas Tech as a professor, and the director, who's a very incredible director, they're kind of tied in together because you can't just go to another 5A, 6A and just grab a job
Right.
and have it met up with a Division I university PhD system.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I
So
got it.
they are tied into geography. But if you're a new student with less ties, don't make that mistake. Don't go into an interview process going, oh, I just want to teach in San Antonio or Houston or Dallas Fort Worth. Great things happening. The small school one, there is a lot of work in small school, but I did it for 13, 14 years. There's a lot of reward too.
Well, can I ask you something? I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
again, this is maybe I'm missing something. We're talking about people on a job search, right?
Right.
If you need a job, you need a job. If you're not going to move to the place that you're applying to, don't apply. You're wasting everybody's time. Is that
Yep.
too simple?
Yeah, that's pretty blunt and true. What we fall into a lot of times, people will go to a let's say they're applying for a job in Dallas Fort Worth and they actually get an interview, and then they'll mention the fact that, well, I'm just not going to consider working in a small school, and they don't realize they're looking in the eyes of a fine arts director who spent 20 years in a 3A school.
Exactly.
So it's like, be careful because from what you just said, but plus you don't want to insult the people you're interviewing by saying, I'm not going to waste my time in a small school,
Well, you're just
and
waving an ignorant flag around.
yeah, that's exactly what you're doing. Yeah.
Sorry.
No, there's no doubt about that at all. Okay. Remember, you're in it for the kids, not the geographic location. And I must admit that I kind of stayed in the same area. I mean, my dad was in the Air Force, and he settled in Iowa Park when I was a seventh grader, went to Iowa Park High School, went all of 20 miles over to Midwestern State University. And then, I worked in Electra, Throckmorton, Holiday, and made the big move all the way down south to Abilene. So I'm probably not the best example of that. But in a different situation, I might have ended up somewhere else. I don't know.
But I
But
would
it
also
just
say
always
this:
worked out.
allow yourself to be surprised
Yeah.
positively.
Yeah.
You might not have any idea the great experience that's waiting for you if you just won't put limitations on what you will or won't do.
Right. And I've had the honor and luxury of being able to clinic in almost all parts of the state. The only thing I haven't had is down in the valley. It's
Okay.
such wonderful band programs. But kids are kids.
Yeah.
Music is music. Directors are directors. Whether it's behind the pine curtain over in East Texas, or it's in the power corridor of I-35, or if it's towards El Paso, or it's in the Concho Valley, or whatever it is, the big country. It's all basically the same. When we get the gigs, we kind of figure out where the church is, the grocery store, the school, and the movie theater, and a few other items, and it's all the same.
Right. And if
It's
you
all the same.
are in it for the right reasons, I promise you'll find the reward,
Yes.
no matter where it is.
Yeah, and to kind of finalize on this, just a few little tiny things to kind of finish it up, because we got all the way through this in one podcast. That's cool. Hopefully, this will help out some people. When you send in your materials, whether cover letter, resume, all that good stuff, references, try really hard to make it one document and name it all three. That makes it easier for the HR people instead of multiple documents. Send it in a PDF.
Okay.
I don't know how
I
many
agree with
times
that.
I'd get it in a Word file. Now, between us two, we send stuff to each other in Word files because we know if it gets real wonky, we can send it again and put it in a PDF. But you don't have that chance if you're applying at a school. It comes all weird and everything looks weird.
They're
You
just not
know,
going to look at it.
yeah, they're just going to throw it away. I mean, I hate to be so blunt. Make it concise as possible. Triple check your spelling. Make sure the cover letter's to the correct school. Okay. When actively seeking employment, that's a killer, man. And I'm not saying I push them out all completely, but it does set a bad first impression. Do not send a 6-page resume. If you had a babysitting job once when you were in 8th grade, that really doesn't apply to the current situation.
That's true.
I don't know how many times I've had, I was the counselor at the Heart of Texas Bible Camp in Brady, Texas, and great. I'm looking for a percussion instructor to lead these kids who are
Say,
high-powered percussionists. I love it, but get to the point.
can you
And
spell rudiment? And do you know what a
yeah,
flat
yeah.
or ratamacue is?
Yeah, let's show us what you got. Show us what you got. And in your resume, this is just my preference. I don't really know if there's an intended format for this. I like my resumes when I receive them to be in reverse order. I want the most
Meaning
current
most
thing you've
recent
done,
job?
and
Yeah.
most recent is first. And a lot of times it'll start with I was junior high band president. Then you have to dig and dig and dig to find out what they did when they got out of college. So just do it the opposite way. That way I know when I can quit when I want to quit on that. Okay. And the last thing to kind of tie it together, unless you have some questions or whatever to kind of tie this up, answer your phone and check your emails. It may be an interview opportunity. And this is so important. I hate to say it, be available to interview. If I have to get the fifth or sixth option for your availability, it makes me think you don't really want to work here.
Right. Or
Think about
you're
that. A little
the,
too high maintenance.
the caveat I would say to that is when you get called, you can say, man, I really want to do this. I do have these other things scheduled here, but here's my 2 or 3 best times I can do that. Is that acceptable to you as a
Yes, that's fine. But problem I run into is I'll call them and say, "Hey, let's set up an interview, man. I've been really impressed with your resume. Let's well, I don't know. Let's next Tuesday." And then Friday they call back, "Oh man, I had something come up Tuesday. Can we change that to Wednesday?" Yeah, we can do it. I'm talking dealing with a principal, myself, you know. Oh, well, you understand the process. It
I
kind of
do.
keeps going, and finally you're like, forget it. Forget it.
Right.
You're a little too high maintenance. Your life is too busy to work at this school district.
You
Um,
understand that we do work here.
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you might not be surprised because you're in the hiring firing process as well, just a different job source. But you find that happens. People
All
are
the
a little
time.
too high maintenance to work for you. So if you really do want to work at that job, I mean, as best of your ability, drop whatever you're doing and say, what time is it best for you to interview? Tuesday at 2 o'clock. I will be there. Sorry, Grandma, I'm
Yep.
not going to eat lunch with you this week.
Right. You are my
So I'll catch you
priority.
on Wednesday. Yeah, I love you, Grandma, but I'm going to see you Wednesday,
Okay.
or come
So
early on Monday.
here's one thing that I would throw in there. It kind of clicked in. I find this a lot when I send things to people. For whatever reason, my domain name gets thrown into the junk or the spam.
Hmm.
And so sometimes I'm saying this not as me, but as a person in the job search process, don't get indignant, don't get angry until you make sure, because you can offend somebody by saying, blah, 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 blah. You didn't even send that to me. We did.
Yeah.
And I've gone back and I went, oh, it was in my junk folder. Sorry. It really was there. And it's a whole thing that you didn't have to do. So check all of it. Technology is beautiful, but make sure you exhaust the possibilities before you
Yes.
sound indignant.
And
Um,
go in the other direction. I would advise send a hard copy through snail mail as well as
Snail mail.
technology. Send it to them, man. Put a postage stamp on that thing and send it to them. And that way, at least things have been covered and they've got a
Sure.
copy. They might look at it and go, I've already got that on my computer. But they might go, whoa, where did this come from?
Okay.
For whatever reason, it didn't get onto their computer, into their
So
system.
let me ask you one other question about job searching. As a person who's
Okay.
looking for a music education position in, wherever you are, whatever this time frame is. And you've already said this kind of. Everybody naturally prioritizes the jobs they want.
Yes.
But as a job searcher, are you going to accept any uh, again, I think we limit ourselves if we only send applications to places we want to go. We might not get a job.
Right.
So we blanket. I mean, you create your own priority list. Everybody does that their own way.
Hmm.
But I would think it's better, as you said, to send out 40 and get 2 interviews out of that because we weren't limiting ourselves to only the jobs we think are worthy of our service.
Right.
Was that too convoluted?
No, that makes perfect sense.
Because here's the way human nature works too. We get a job interview or we get interest from somewhere that's really not in our top 3, but I still think you need to go take that interview.
Yes. If anything else, just for the experience of it.
Right. And if it doesn't work out, at least, because I promise you, if somebody calls them, they'll say, you know what, we talked to this guy and probably be a perfect fit for y'all. Or we talked to this young lady was incredible, but it just didn't work here. As long as you are professional and you do the things you're supposed to do, you communicate, and you don't walk in with you would be so lucky to have me here, but I'm really not that interested.
Yeah. And sometimes you're lucky enough to find yourself in that situation.
Yeah.
You know, if you've been very successful, let's say at a 5A school, and and then someone calls you and asks you to come to work there, you don't have to present that type of attitude, but you're in a win-win situation.
Right.
You know, it's different than when you're coming out of college and it's like, man, I just want to get my feet on the ground. And I've worked 4 full-time jobs as a band director. None of those 4 were perfect jobs.
Yeah.
They didn't have all the things I wanted, but they were good jobs. They were
So
good jobs.
This is an old, I'm trying to remember, it may be a Zig Ziglar's thing, but the truth is if you work really hard and do the best you can, and again, I'm not talking about a new hire straight out of college, but you really only have to have one job interview because people will come looking for you if you do a great job and do things right the first time.
Yeah, that's true.
Is that too far out there to say that?
No,
I don't know if that works in this profession at all. I think it does. I think
it works more so in this profession.
I think people headhunt all the time in music education. Meaning,
oh yeah,
this is what I'm looking for. I want this guy because I want that lady because they have a track record, and whether you will or not, they believe you're going to do that same thing there.
Yes. And to piggyback on that, I tell you what, most years I have a list of 15 to 20 job searchers, and then superintendents will call, or fine arts directors or band directors will call, and they'll say, hey, I'm looking for, and they'll say, I need a person who can do this, 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 and this, and this. So I compare it to my list, and I kind of help the 2 sides connect.
Right.
This year, it's been a lot harder.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have a list.
I agree.
You know, it's a buyer's market out there for you job searchers that I'm talking to. It's a buyer's market. You've got things on your side on this particular year, and it all goes in cycles. Next year might be totally different.
And we find the same thing right now in this job market.
Yeah.
But here's the other thing I would say to job searchers. I think it's great for y'all right now because technology has allowed us to I knew a lot of directors that spent their entire career, kind of like you said, around the Wichita Falls area.
Mm-hmm.
If it's in the West Texas area, they may change some jobs, but typically it's within the same geographic part of our world.
Mm-hmm.
And whether that's moving up or just a new experience or whatever. But with technology now, and I should probably wind this down. I could get into a long conversation. Used to be, if you went to a certain school, they were great about placing their graduates. But I think that we've gotten into a world where the internet, whatever forum boards might be out there, allow people to make their job search a lot wider than it used to be. Maybe that's what I'm trying
no
to say.
doubt. Yeah, when I came out of Midwestern State, there was about 7 of us that all got placed in my graduating class within probably 40 miles of Wichita Falls.
Right.
And had very successful careers.
Right.
Some of those guys had honor bands, some of those ladies had honor bands, state marching championships, and it all came out of that graduating class. But there wasn't the widespread, hey, I graduated from this school, so therefore I'm going to go to Brownsville.
Right.
And now it's not that uncommon.
Right.
At all, because you're right. The technology, it's a smaller world.
When I went to West Texas, and when I first started as an education rep or road rep, I guarantee you most of the people I called on, I had a connection to from West Texas because of the geographic part of the world that I worked in.
Right.
But I think a lot of that, and I'm not saying that's positive, negative, indifferent. It's just what technology's done for us. Don't be scared. Get your stuff out there,
Yeah.
do your research, and then be open to those phone calls and make sure you're available to be
Hmm.
hired. Do the best you can at that first job and watch where the world takes you.
That's right.
So that was my little synopsis of what I heard from you today.
Yeah. That's
So
it. It's
cool.
it's a skill. It's a skill for them to learn how to search for jobs.
Awesome. Well, my friend, I sure appreciate you sharing knowledge. I sure appreciate the fact that, some of us like to, I need to be careful. I don't want to put myself in. Some people like to hoard that knowledge so they can feel like they're smarter than everybody else. I so appreciate the fact that you're willing to share the things that you know, that you've learned. And listen, we're all still learning, aren't we?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Well, I think that we're going to make this available on the website. I know that if you have a question about any of this, that Mr. Lundy's more than happy to respond. Ask Mike at intunemusic.com. And until we see you again, my brother, I hope you have a great week.
It'll
Hope you
be a
have a
good one.
great time. You job searchers, get off your butt, get your resumes out there,
But don't panic.
don't panic. All right,
It's
man.
still early.
Have a good one.
You too.